Hey again, I wanted to come at you with another lesson. This one is about sketching. A lot of people talk about sketching and you all have a sketchbook. And we're going to look at what it really means to start and work on building up a drawing. And this will use some of the stuff we've already done together and it will introduce some new terms. All right, so you've got your sketching pencil and your sketchbook and your sketch paper inside that book. Um, Sketch is a word that gets tossed around a lot in art. You know, people say, well, it's really just a sketch. And what a sketch is either a sketch of a thing. You know, it's not quite finished, it's just a sketch. That's how we use that word sometimes. Or it's the process of building up your drawing. And usually when I say sketching, and what I want to share with you today is kind of sketching as a verb, sketching as building a foundation for your drawing below the finished surface of your drawing. What I'm doing here is I'm sketching, from what I know, I'm sketching a model of the human head. And I'm sort of laying in touchstones or waypoints to kind of map out what I know about drawing people all these years and sort of give a place for my details to go. So I'm not finishing any part of this drawing, and none of this will be the feature of my finished drawing. It's just sort of the underdrawing, the groundwork. So in your sketching process and drawing, you're laying a foundation for the finished drawing. Kind of like if someone were to build a house, they would first lay the foundation before they put up the walls. Now, I don't know anything about building houses, so I'm just going to talk to you about drawing. I'm using a pencil, I'm drawing lightly, I'm sort of building a foundation for my other drawing, for my finished drawing, and I'm just drawing this from my imagination. So bear with me on this and I'll show you just kind of my process of sketching out a finished drawing of a character. I don't really know who I'm drawing yet. I'm just kind of building up to something. And when we're done with this, we're going to go through a sketching process for two characters that you'll know, two characters I really like to draw. And when we do that, you'll kind of see the difference between a 2D or a cartoony comic booky drawing and a more three-dimensional, more realistic style of drawing. And they're two kind of different sketch processes, so I'm just gonna walk and talk you through each one, because for some people one might really make sense because of the style in which they like to draw, and for others the other one might make more sense. So as you see, as I'm building it up and I'm starting to get more of what I want out of the drawing, I'm pushing a little harder with my pencil. I'm making more definitive finished lines. And if I were working on pen and paper, I would draw this first in pencil, and I would never make really, really dark lines with my pencil. I would keep it kind of light. And then I would come back in with a water-fast pen, something like a Micron or a Faber-Castell, something that is not going to bleed or streak if I erase and watercolor over it. That's the process I like to do. I like to erase out my pencil lines and then watercolor over it, and I'll put an example on screen of a few of those and what they might look like. So I still don't know who I'm drawing. I'm just kind of making up a character here. He's kind of looking like Ben from Parks and Rec. Or no, what's his boss's name? Chris. Kind of looks like him. I've been watching a lot of Parks and Rec. But that's not intentional. I just started drawing kind of a comic booky type of face. Filling in details, you can see how when I say building up the drawing, how I'm using that terminology, because what started out looking really kind of loosey-goosey and not making much sense is starting to look a little more realistic and maybe a little more recognizable. If I were drawing someone trying to make it look just like them, I might work from a photo for reference, and that's what you'll see in the next part of this video, which I think we should just jump to. I just wanted to show you guys kind of a sketch process. I work pretty fast because I'm an impatient person and I've practiced a lot, but take your time. And when you're drawing something from your imagination, remember that can be really difficult if you haven't done the time and observation. So it might be best for practice to work from a photo or from a character or from a picture of a character, a cartoon character you like, or a real person. just because that way you don't have to rely on yourself to come up with all the little details. You can use a reference, which is what we're going to do next. No claim to Baby Yoda. I don't own any part of the rights of the character. I just like to draw him because he's funny and cute. So that's who I'm going to draw next. And I'm going to sketch. This is what I meant by a more realistic, three-dimensional sketch. So I'm going to sort of just look for, we looked over the basic shapes in one of our previous lessons about value. And so if we look at Baby Yoda, we know he's really a sphere at the top. Don't know what's going on under the cloak. Not really what I'm interested in. And then his ears are conical. So they're not just ear flaps that stick out. They have a cone shape to them. And so that'll matter when we're doing our shading if we choose to, and when we're doing our drawing, just building up the foundation. We see that it has this front lobe and then it curls back under, and if we had contour lines, they'd look something like that. Okay, so I'm starting to sketch out those details, just looking at angles. You can use a measuring tool. There's a strategy I can't really show you easily on this video of holding up your pencil and kind of measuring how long something is in relationship to something else by marking it with your thumb. Some people find that really useful. I don't do it that often anymore. I did when I was in school a lot. It's that thing though when you see an artist in a cartoon holding their thumb up and looking at whoever or whatever they're painting. That's where that comes from. They're using their thumb or their paintbrush or their pencil to measure the distance between two objects. So I'm marking an eye line in just as a guide to myself to know that these eyes will kind of wrap around the same three-dimensional shape. I always put in a little nose line, a little marker for where I think the nose is going to be. But with sketching, you can change your mind on things. You can go in and make new decisions. That's part of the importance of the process. You're not stuck with anything final that you might not be 100% happy with, because you're drawing so lightly. You can always go in and erase, and you can always go in and add things or change things as you see fit. So I'm kind of looking at his brow line and the shapes that it makes. And maybe this isn't a character you want to draw. Maybe this is something you can just kind of learn from how I am addressing it. I'm seeing though, as I look at his brow line, I made the eyes a little too high on the head initially. So see, I'm already making some changes. I'm going to go in with my eraser and pull some of that out. One of the things that makes Baby Yoda so cute are those big black eyes and the shape, so we have to make sure we get that right. They're lower on the inside, a little bit higher on the outside. That gives them a look of youth, like a little kitten or puppy or even baby human, almond-shaped eyes. And now we have the tricky part, trying to make the other side match the first eye. The first eye I always draw is kind of right in my mind, and then the other one is just trying to catch up. I don't know if any of you have found that. So as I'm getting more comfortable with where I'm putting things, I'm darkening them up a little. I think I'm making his eyes a little too small, so I'm going to go ahead and work towards the outside of his face here, because I can see in the drawing here that there's not a lot going on between the edge of his eye and the outside of his face where his ear begins. Over here there's more because he's kind of turned this way a little. He's kind of in a 3/4 turn, or maybe 5/8, not quite 3/4. Fractions. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and commit to these eye shapes, because I feel pretty good about them. And those reflections that I'm leaving in aren't really there in the picture. There's a lot of realistic reflected detail in his eyes, but I'm choosing to simplify it a little bit. And those are choices you get to make as the artist working on the piece. You get to say, well, this looks a little more like how I want it to look, as opposed to how it really is. And that's your choice. his eyelids are complicated. They're really tall. And I'm choosing to kind of just dig in here. Sometimes I'll work on the whole structure of the face before I really dig into one area. But here I'm kind of really interested in what's happening with his brow and the edge of his eye. And that little shadow underneath. Tell you, whoever designed this character, I've looked a little bit into it, and half the time it was a puppet, and sometimes it was CG, but whoever designed it, they nailed it. They made you care so much. I hope this isn't a spoiler for anyone. I guess I won't really talk about the content of the show. But the design of the character, my goodness. Masterful. And I guess that's a pun, as Yoda is a master. But this isn't Yoda. Wait, I don't think it's Yoda. Some people think it's a clone. I don't know. There's a lot of questions. All right, so now we've worked our way down to the nose. I see that I made mine too low initially. His falls just below the eye line. And so I'm going to move it up a little bit. And again, use that all-powerful eraser tool to pull some of it out. And he's just got that little button nose. Little nostrils on the side. This isn't going to be my best drawing ever, but I just want to work quickly enough to keep it interesting and maybe have kind of a successful drawing at the end. I can always go back and revisit it later. Using a little bit of that value mark making we talked about in a previous lesson. I'm doing a little bit of cross hatching and hatching because that works really well with this tablet that I use. And it's a good way to show value quickly without having to spend too much time on refining it. Those little wrinkles, laughs at the edge of his mouth. Well, now that I moved his nose up, I see his mouth is too low also, so I'm going to move the whole thing up a little bit, and his whole face is just going to get squished a bit when we get down to the chin, I think. And he's not looking very happy here. Little frown at the edge of his mouth. Little trembling lip. Oh, poor baby Yoda. What scared you? I don't remember this part. Just laying in some value down there where the shadows are. Just like with our contour drawing, my eye is going back and forth between my drawing and our subject. So the photo is right there for me to look at. His chin is kind of a lot higher than I thought it was in my initial sketch. I moved some things around, so I'm just going to make adjustments as I go. And now, of course, his whole head has shrunk a little, so his ears look enormous. I mean, they're big anyways, but they look even bigger. So let's look at these ears. Fuzzy on top, which is hard to draw. That's going to be something that needs some value to represent that fuzz, I think. Keep your eye going back and forth, checking on your relationships between things. Your initial sketch is building it up using basic shapes, basic forms like we talked about, three-dimensional shapes in this case, not squares but cubes, not circles but spheres. And then it's just a back and forth, a give and take between yourself and your drawing, trying to refine it, find where things don't look quite right, find where you're not quite sure, and just keep moving back and forth. Give a little, take a little back, use your eraser a lot. Don't draw too hard until you're really, really sure of where things are, because getting those things right is what really will make or break your drawing for your own happiness with it. Doesn't really matter what someone else says about it. We all like it when someone says, oh, your drawing's so cool, but as long as you're happy with it, that's what really matters to me and should to you. Okay, because the fuzzy head is the last thing I'm going to draw, we have a bald baby Yoda right now. He has recently gone to the barber, I guess. I'm just looking at those folds in the fabric and seeing where this piece goes over the lower part of the collar, and I'm not going to take it much further than that. I'm just going to apply some lines over here. Just sort of a sketchy little drawing. Let's see what happens if I just do some scribble. Scribble, scribble, scribble like we did in our mark making video, and see if I can give kind of an impression of that fine, what is that, like a tennis ball fuzz that Baby Yoda has all over his head. Alright, I'm going to bring in my eraser and just take out a few lines. If it was a real eraser, I could be more exact with it, but I'm going to be cautious not to take away too much now. And I think it's okay. I'm pretty okay with this. I'm going to mark it okay, because it's not my favorite drawing I've ever done, but I'm happy with it. And I think it'll work for this lesson. Alright, I'm going to start a new page when we come back. I was trying to think of a two-dimensional character that I really like without going too old school. I thought of Looney Tunes. I love Looney Tunes. And then I thought of like Steven Universe or something, but I've never seen Steven Universe, so I didn't know if that would be a good choice. So I decided on a character I love, Samurai Jack. Now, if you've never seen Samurai Jack, I think it's appropriate for everyone. Maybe not young students, because it's about a samurai, but it's a very cool cartoon. It was on when I was in high school, and then they brought it back a few years ago. So with two-dimensional sketching as opposed to three-dimensional, we're still looking at shapes and relationships, but we're going to do less worrying about building up forms and more paying attention to lines. So I see this line arcing around here, and again, I'm going to start so loose and sloppy. I'm not going to worry about anything being right or ready until I start to repair some of my mistakes. But what I'm first looking at is relationships between lines. So I know this line here curves down around here. This one sticks out a little further. I think my angle on that was pretty bad. Okay, so there we have kind of this top part of his costume. Anyone who knows the right terms for samurais, just leave it in the comments, because I'm sure they don't call it their samurai costume. Okay, now I'm going to start to look at where his head is in relationship to his shoulder. And I'm going to mark just a vertical line here where I can start to place it. I think I made my whole shape a little too narrow, so I'm going to bring it out here. Already making some big changes and corrections as I'm catching them, because no artist that I've ever met marks something down on paper and that's final and that's perfect and that's the way it is. There's a lot of back and forth, give and take. I guess that's the reason it's called artwork. It's work. You have to really keep at it. Don't expect perfection. Nobody gets perfection the first time. I didn't wake up on my 10th birthday knowing how to draw like this. I had to really work at it. I had to go to school for a long time. Practice, practice, practice. You're seeing basic shapes here. His hair is a triangle. In fact, it's a obtuse scalene triangle. And you got just some little curves over here where his hair comes down into his cool Elvis sideburns. And again, I'm always kind of just glancing back and forth, checking my relationships between my shapes, looking for those details. And I'm sketching in kind of the edges of where I think his eyes will be. This is a lot of fun, and it's probably more appealing to you than some of the exercises I've given in previous videos. And I wanted to do something that kind of tied together some of the stuff we've learned already, and then took it into a place that you can really expand on your own. You don't have to wait for another lesson to practice sketching. This is just something you can do every day. You know, set out a still life, practice on that. Look up a picture of your favorite cartoon character, or a character you maybe don't even know. Practice on that. Oh my gosh, I made his face so low he doesn't have a mouth. Eraser. So I made his nose too long. And I'm still looking at, I made his whole head bigger than the original drawing. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring this sleeve marker down, because that's easier to move than the whole face for me. If I had to erase the whole face, it would be disheartening at this point. There we go. That's looking a little more like it. And you know, if my drawing is 60% just like the other one, great. 70% just like the other one, wonderful. It doesn't need to be 100%. It's still my drawing, my version, my opinion of this drawing. That's actually why artists like me, I think, can get away with drawing so many other people's characters, because we say it's our opinion of the character, it's our interpretation of the character. And I guess we'll find out. If I get a lawsuit for this video, then we'll know that I was wrong. He said ominously. Now here I'm not doing much sketching, because I'm just looking right at that hand, and I know I'm not going to have it in the same place, because already my drawing is a little bit off of the beaten path, or the map that I'm looking at here on my left. First of all, this whole hand is up too high. But like I said, make adjustments, get the parts that matter to you, not right or wrong, but just to a place where you're happy with it. I use a lot of erasing. It's a very powerful tool. And like I'm repeating myself, I'm sure, because I'm kind of zoning out. But as long as your drawing is something you like when you're done, sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll say, I need to put it away. But don't tear it out, don't throw it away. Put it away and come back to it later. Because I have many, many times worked too long on a project and said, oh, this is terrible, and then put it away and came back a day or 2 days or a week later with fresh eyes and let my emotions about it cool down, and I came back to it feeling a lot better. And I'd kind of surprise myself and look at what I did the night before, the week before, and say, oh, no, I remember that being really off and wrong, but now I see the issue. I see I just need to change this or that, and I see the good qualities that I didn't see before because I was working on it too much, or I was fighting with it too much and not seeing really like the best parts. So give it a little space, come back to it later. I'm going to accept the fact that my sword is off camera for me, because maybe he's running a little closer to the camera or something. And also this video is running a little long. So I'm comfortable and happy with this drawing of Samurai Jack. Add a little tone, kind of differentiate those areas. And like I said earlier, if I were working on paper, I would come in, once I got my pencil drawing portion done, I would come in and ink it with an ink pen right over the pencil, let that dry for certain, and then erase out your pencil lines. And that little trick makes your drawings look a lot more professional and a lot more finished, because right how when you look at this right now you can see much of the process. You can see that I struggled here. You can see that the ear is a little off. You can see all the areas where I erased and maybe sketched a lot of underdrawing. But once I ink it and erase all of the work, all the mistakes, then all you see is the finished product. And that makes it look a lot more intentional and finished. So that's all I'm going to do for today. I hope that gives you some good things to move forward on. I hope that you get to practice some sketching, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson.